Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre. Another Wednesday, another show, and today's guest is best-selling author Eve Smith. Her new novel, Off Target, is a amazing thriller, a very tight, near-future thriller about genetically modified babies, modified, enhanced mostly, at least when it comes to the intention of the parents. Now, we're here at a very special place, the Mokosh Clinic, where the motto is motherhood, family, happiness. You deserve it. You worked hard, and here it is. So in Eve's book, the protagonist Susan and her husband Steve, they're trying for a baby for I think it's several years. It's not working. Susan goes off one night, has a one night stand. She gets pregnant, does not tell her husband, goes to this clinic where you can edit out the the uh, the genetic information of the father, the affair dude, and insert the DNA from her husband, so he will not find out. And you can do this while you're pregnant in this thriller. So let let that possibility sink in for a while I'm giving you a little tour of the venue, because I also want to ask the audience questions, and I hope people are honest enough to answer them. Now here we're here at the Makosh Clinic. The Makosh Clinic is a character in the book, as is the chief uh, the chief medical officer, I guess. And here we have protesters. They are from a group called Fruit of the Womb. And they have these signs: GM babies for sale, GM babies for sale. And we have a lot of kids around here, and we have wonderful, heartwarming pictures of happy, happy families, because that is all that matters. Am I right? Says Eve Smith is here. Welcome, Eve Smith.
Hi, Drax. It's lovely to be here.
You look a little bit creepy. This was by your request. I want to say this in a non-judgmental way, because we are who we are. At least if God, or the God of virtual reality, creates us, sometimes we can modify ourselves. You requested this look.
I did request this look because it's very much taken from the cover of my novel, and I think it represents everything that people get tempted to do, that they start thinking about very bizarre concepts of perfection, which inevitably go wrong.
This book, and this is what I want to talk about. So the what perfection means and what sort of desirable means, and people know that Shyla and Monkey, they're both part of the research team, so they look at interviews and stuff that you've done, or your own information on your website. I read the book, and then we have different perspectives, because I come from it from the book, and you and they come from it from the background of who you are. So this is we had a really interesting meeting. I had a meeting with Shyla before, and she was talking about genetically modifying the self. And Shyla is has physical disability, and she said, I wouldn't want to change that. That's part of who I am. So this was a really interesting conversation, because the doctor in the book, society at large, they want to change towards um, towards what, right? Towards what kind of view of perfection? Who determines what perfection is, or what desirable is?
Exactly. Exactly. And everybody has, I think the problem with these amazing technologies is you can do so much. And at the beginning, all the discussion at the moment around gene editing is, well, surely it's got to be a good thing, right? For certain terminal hereditary diseases, what's wrong with that? But the issue we always have in our delightful history, as history shows, is that where do you draw the line? And everybody draws it differently. And
Yeah.
where do you stop? Can I just check that everyone can hear me okay?
Oh, actually, you just disappeared out of Second Life. I think you were genetically edited to go offline. No problem. So please take your time to come back in. I will riff for a little bit because
Okay.
we have two quotes actually from you, and let me lead from what you just said. We don't know. I agree with you. We don't know where to stop. What we also, and your book is so brilliant in putting this forward. We also have a weird incentive structure. So the doctor and their clinic, I mean, they, you know, you go to them, say, hey, can you edit this in? Can you edit this out? Sure. Can you pay? And so that is another big factor. Did I mention celebrity sperm? So if people people go like this goes over my head, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go to a bar. What celebrity sperm? I'm gonna stick around. Um, so I'm gonna read this quote from you from a interview. Human genome editing will ultimately happen. In fact, it already is happening in China. 3 years ago, twins and another baby girl were edited as embryos to make them more resistant to HIV. We still don't know what the outcome of that procedure was. One thing's for sure, though, making permanent changes to human DNA that can pass down to future generations is a massive deal. And therefore, it should be a collective decision. So
Absolutely.
as you're going back in, what do you mean by collective decision? Are you a communist? Because I am.
Well,
Why can't the
basically,
market decide this stuff?
wow. I think the danger is that we, if we leave these decisions to the scientific community, and we let small groups of people make decisions in small rooms, we know where that gets us, right?
Yep.
And because this is such a massive area and it will affect all of us and subsequent generations, then I think there needs to be some level of consultation, um, with a much wider group of people beyond the scientific community, because this is about how we want humanity to go forward. That's got to be one of the biggest questions going, right? So if we are all at different, different perspectives around whether we should leave us as God intended, or whether we should do everything we can to advance us, a bit like an iPhone,
Right.
human version 2.1. Well, let's see what that looks like. But unless everybody has a chance to have a say, not just the powerful and the scientific, then I think we're headed for a big disaster.
This is a really good point, and because I think a lot of people would say, well, this is when they talk about well, whose decision is this? Well, of course, the parents need to decide that, but I absolutely agree with you that society as a whole has to decide that, although it is ultimately an individual decision, and but the reason why we should decide or we should regulate this collectively is the way it is now, rich people can very easily super enhance themselves, and poor people will fall further behind. There's already an incredible inequality, and if this stuff becomes commonplace, the kind of gene editing in terms of optimizing your performance in academia or whatever it is just going to heighten that kind of inequality. If people want to chime in the local chat on these topics, please do. I will read the comments. I'm just going to bring up the chat. Um, Jerry McNally, why am I thinking of Monica Lewinsky's dress at the moment? Um, Maybe she cloned Bill Clinton. I don't know. Uh, Ardern says replacing the normal CCR5 with CCR5 Delta 32 renders you resistant to bubonic plague and HIV. Now, Arden Schwartzman here in the audience, who created these amazing fruit of the womb um,
Oh, they're beautiful.
t-shirts, he is a lapsed biologist. He's now a very successful Second Life designer, but he apparently still needs to hit people over the head with his biological knowledge. Um, Now, going from the question of making this a collective decision, or at least regulating it, which I agree wholeheartedly because of the aforementioned issue. What I find really interesting in the book also is that you juxtapose China in the book, where there is a lot of where it's rampant, and also there's a lot of scandals of um, gene editing that goes awry, where other issues are um, uh, getting worse. Other diseases, one disease goes away, the other one then you're more prone to this other disease because it's a very, very complicated process, and there's a lot of sort of shady, sort of black market clinics and so on and so forth. What is interesting that the main protagonist in the book, the family is a British family, and you hear on and off within the community of folks who choose to do that, that, oh, we're not China. I found this really fascinating aspect of the story because I feel that Western countries use that actually quite often in terms of, yeah, we're not as crazy as the Chinese when it comes to sort of optimizing and making our kids so anxious to be performative and be successful. I would say we absolutely do that. We might do it on a tiny little smaller scale, but we have those same sort of pressures put upon young people to just be these sort of racehorses.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it's very concerning. I mean, and I mentioned China and Russia in the book actually, not because I'm trying to have a go, um, given everything that's going on. Bear in mind, I did write this some time ago, but because some of you may know that actually in China, um, we have already gene edited embryos. And this is quite scary. And funnily enough, I read an article today that said what is going to happen to the three embryos that were genetically edited 4 years ago by a
Hmm.
Chinese scientist who, ostensibly was trying to do a good thing and help them make them resistant to HIV because the father had HIV.
Hmm.
But the reality is that there are now three young children who are out there who have had literally their genetic code altered, and nobody really knows what's going to happen. But one thing's for sure, they're pretty sure that a lot of other changes, these off target effects, that's where the name of the book comes from.
I was just gonna say those are off-target effects. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Unintended consequences. We're pretty sure that's what's going to happen. So, yeah.
And one boy in the book is also he was treated by his mother. They did a test, and there was a likelihood for depression, and he was treated. His genes were treated to prevent that, and then it turns out that he actually suffers from depression when he hits the teenage years, which reminded me, of course, of the a few years ago. I wouldn't call it a scandal, but it was there was nothing nefarious about it other than I think those things were not really tested. But the antidepressants and some SSRIs led actually to suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, and so they were prescribed to prevent what they then sort of enhanced, and so you describe in the book then sort of the genetic version of it. I think you're coming in and you're disappearing. Oh,
Yeah.
now you're landing again at the landing point.
I'm just,
Camera,
I'm
cam.
constantly landing.
No, that's cool.
Is that
You,
all right?
yeah, I mean, this is an unintended effect,
Yeah.
um,
I'm,
but
I'm sort of,
listen, it gives us the opportunity for the camera to also train the camera on this dog that is running around here, please, if you will, and who might be Eve's dog. I don't know. Uh,
oh, yes, the little German Shepherd Collie Cross. That's my Lola. Yes.
and also, there is, as we pointed out, the two protesters. One protester, her name is the Lord himself is God. The other protester's name, what is the other protester's name? I don't see his name. Was he Welcome to Texas? I don't know. Uh, no, he was in a different show. But also, we have a T-shirt here to give away, and several people here in the audience are wearing this T-shirt. It says Bumpy Riders on it, Bumpy Riders, and Bo Venus did that T-shirt. Now, what are the Bumpy Riders, Eve? I found these details so awesome. What are the Bumpy Riders?
So this is a group. So Susan, my protagonist,
Bumpy Roadsters. Sorry, are they?
roadsters.
What
Yeah,
am I talking about?
don't
Yes.
worry. I wasn't gonna correct you. Don't worry. So Susan, my protagonist, one of the reasons why she makes the rather worrying decision she does and genetically modifies her child is that she's been desperate to have a child for so long. And she has joined a group called the Bumpy Roadsters. And I got this because I had a really good friend who went through hell trying to conceive, like 12 IVFs. And she said that what kept her sane were these groups of people that they get together, these communities, who are all kind of going along the same path, and they all gave themselves nicknames, and they just basically kept each other going. And so in the book, Susan's group is called the Bumpy Roadsters, and they all give each other moral support in the sort of harrowing journey to try and conceive.
What is the, and I think there's several ads in the book, and for several different services around pregnancy, fertility, and so on and so forth. And the persistent slogan is that, or one slogan that stuck out to me is that it's your right to conceive, the right to conceive. And I found that rather interesting because I'm not sure, I'm not sure that that is a right. I think we have a right to clean air and water and all this kind of good stuff, and but you can see that the couple in the book, um the mother does some bad kind of selfish things. The father is also has kind of a secret that he doesn't disclose, but they're also kind of, to me, victims of a system that is very sort of normative, that kind of pushes the idea of this family unit. And if you don't have this perfect family with this one child or two children, then something is wrong with you, right? So
Mm.
I don't know what the motivation of the, can't see into their heads completely, but talk a little bit about that component. I mean, I'm a family man myself, and I'm completely happy with this arrangement, but I would not go out there and force other people or look down on them if they had if they don't have that arrangement.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? So you're talking about sort of forcing people to take part in the whole genetic modification piece, right?
No, I'm just talking pregnancy. I'm just talking about, oh my God, I gotta get pregnant, I gotta have a child.
Oh,
What I'm
yeah.
talking about, are we victims of a system that is kind of judging us if we're not adhering to this
Oh,
normative family thing?
yeah.
Not only as a, for women it's probably harder, but for men too, to a certain extent.
No,
That-
definitely, definitely, and there is a huge amount of pressure, and people. There's not a lot of discussion around male infertility, and actually, the reality is that it's half and half, right? When people are
Mhm.
struggling to conceive, the problems are half and half, and there are these huge expectations on parents or on adults, to be parents, which that's not fair. But in the book, Susan, she feels that because she genuinely wants a child, and her
Mhm.
husband Steve also wants a child.
Mhm.
But he's been through some bad experiences, so he wants to conceive naturally, which is why she goes behind his back and, has the procedure that she does have.
Right. And before the procedure is the good old-fashioned humping going on. Of course, alcohol is involved, not to excuse the act, but
Yeah.
that's what's happening. You mentioned male fertility or lack thereof. I
Yeah.
think we have a slide here. This is from a website, Him Fertility, and there's a bunch of um, here: poor quality sperm, infections, testicles, sterilization, hormones, systemic illness, smoking. So here's a bunch of different reasons why this could be, but I guess it's not really well studied, or uh, wh- what did you find out when you researched? Um,
Yeah. Well, I found out that there's definitely nowhere near as research going into male infertility as there is female, for a start, but that is changing. And the other thing is that a lot of people, a lot of men, they don't have these support groups. There's not this as much of a support network out there as there is for women. But again, that is changing too. So I actually think over this next, decade, we will see many, many, many more advances to help men, and that there's all kinds of reasons. Lifestyle has been a big issue, and so
right.
there's been a lot of stuff around, you know uh, guess what? Drugs, booze, alcohol, environmental toxins, stress, basically our daily lives,
Right.
don't help male or female infertility. So there's been quite a lot of behavioral stuff that's going on. But then there are
The
also,
issue that I have with this, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you, the issue, I mean, this is nobody's fault, but something like this, then it can always be shifted to sort of personal responsibility, while environmental factors are also a factor. So again, it
yes,
comes back, and I know people go like, "Oh, Dragster, your drumbeat of the inequality in society." Well, I think it's a huge issue because if you live in an area, let's say, where there's a lot of environmental damage and polluted air or whatever, um, that affects you and it affects your fertility. And then
absolutely.
you go to a doctor, and the doctor might say, "Hey, wait, maybe you should not drink 3 pints in the morning when you get up." I mean, this is the society we live in, and not, doctors come in all sizes and shapes, but I've been to a bunch of doctors who overemphasize a little bit the fact that I'm 15 pounds overweight. But anyways, enough about me.
Well, no, I totally agree with you about environmental factors. There's, what can you do there? But I think on a positive note, the reproductive industry is huge. It is growing, and there is a huge amount of research going on. So I do think that there will be many more solutions for men, and also all of the genetic research that's going on. There are, genetic problems. There are hereditary issues, and there is a lot of work going on there. So I hope the future is bright on that one.
We have in the audience a gigantic snake. Shadow is here, and he said, "May I get permission to res a bunch of my baby snakes?" Absolutely, Shadow. This is all about babies. Who can deny you the right to res your baby snake? As a matter of fact, here is a little excerpt from the book, and we're going to get to some readings too.
Oh
This is an
yes.
excerpt from the book. Since when was it okay to deny people their basic human right to have a family? These parents aren't breaking any laws. Instead of vilifying the unfortunate victims of fertility scams, we should be offering them and their children help and support. Now, I forgot who said that actually. That excerpt. I wrote it down somewhere. I think that maybe
Oh yeah, that was
Carmen, the friend.
yeah, no, that was actually one of the news articles. There's a few. I scatter a few
Oh,
news
that's right.
articles throughout the book because it's a really good way of just pulling the camera back and going from
Yeah.
my protagonist story to what's going on globally. And there's this constant fight between people that are pro genetic edits and those that are anti. And so this is actually about traveling abroad to have reproductive
Oh, that's
treatments. And
right. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's right. And great. And thank you for mentioning it, because that reminds me that in these news articles, well, the celebrity sperm thing is mentioned there as well, but also the there is. Oh no, I maybe should say this later. I don't want to spoil it. Sorry, I have to correct myself. Couple comments here in the local chat in terms of male fertility issues. Arden says tight pants may be the issue, so that might. I wore a lot of tight pants in
I
the in
have
the
heard
in the
that.
80s, so yeah. And Arden says in India, a couple sued their daughter for not providing them grandchildren.
Ooh, oh
Wow.
my goodness. Do you know what?
Mhm.
Yeah, gosh, nothing surprises me anymore. I tell you, when you're an author and you think, oh, I've got to come up with a really cool idea that for speculative fiction, and I get onto Google and I find half the time that it's already happening, or there's already this product, or so. Well, like all the products in the book that I put into the book, I had to be really
Yeah.
careful because some of them were actually in development, and I had to check that all of my names and trademarks weren't actually already in existence. It's quite scary.
Speculative fiction authors and satirists have a really hard time right now. Um,
Yes.
speaking and by the way, for our viewers and listeners, Eve has also left the building again. No problem.
Have I?
Sh-
Oh,
Yes,
I didn't
yes.
think I had. I can see myself.
Oh yeah, you see yourself 2 minutes after we already lost sight of you.
Oh,
That's the kind
sorry.
of genetic editing that's happening right now. But
Right.
since you're speaking of your trademarks or your fictitious brands, and we're gonna have to have a redone the bumpy bumpy
The
roadsters.
roadsters. Yeah.
You have here on the table, if the camera can zoom in, this is an app in your book,
Yes.
Gender
Yeah.
or Genitor, creating your perfect bundle of joy. This is also Ruby created this app here. It's here on the phone, on the table. Maybe the camera can zoom in. So you can basically put your DNA information into this app, and then it creates your breeds, your maybe baby with the traits. We actually have a bunch of breedable games here in Second Life. I just did a little reportage about it. So
Oh,
um, so this is
brilliant.
what's happening in the book that you in your near future, and also a little aside along those lines. What is actually quite fascinating? You also have people have an app where they can take a picture of dog poo,
Yeah.
and then the app from the information that is in the image can figure out what dog that was. So you can actually send that to the police so they get a fine if the dog poops on the sidewalk and you don't pick it
Exactly.
up.
Yeah, you see, you can turn this genetic thing into anything. So yeah, absolutely. There's no like hiding the fact that you didn't pick up anymore because they'll find you.
Do you see if the technology is available with this app with people sort of bumping their information together and then creating their maybe baby?
Yes.
I mean, I see this totally happening. Like I said, I mean, in Second Life is only, I mean, that's only a game aspect with the breedable, but people are totally into breedables. It's a very fun thing. I think there's even breedable shoes in Second Life somehow, but with humans, it's a little, it's a little different.
Yeah. No. Well, again, I was saying that when you sort of, I had the idea and I thought I better go and see if this is happening. There was something in development about a genetic dating app where they were
Wow.
looking to see if you could create attraction genes and whether you could sort of analyze somebody's genetic makeup for these so-called attraction genes and then put them together. So that actually was already in development. But I was quite pleased. I made up Gender, so it's a little play there on obviously Tinder.
Oh,
So
gender. That's how you
Gender,
pronounce it.
yeah.
Gender.
So I made up Gender, and then the really
Oh,
scary thing is, like you said, you can mash together your profiles once you've sort of hit it off with your genetically optimized date. And then they mash up your data and create your maybe baby to see what it would look like. How frightening is that?
I don't know. It's now what I like about the book is also the nuance that you actually put in terms of people who are uneasy with this kind of technological advance. So in that sense, it's very nuanced. I mean, you have several shades of so-called pro-lifers in the book.
Yeah,
Some are have had tragic experiences, then they got help and soothing through religion, which I think is, as an agnostic, I would say that's fine. But then, of course, sometimes religion or the institution can sort of manipulate your feelings, and then you have people in the book who are basically terrorists,
yeah,
right? So talk
exactly.
a little bit about that nuance, because also I think I mean, it's not new that we look at everything very black and white, but talk about that. Do you have understanding for someone who is pro-life?
Yes, I mean, I in the book I felt it was really important to represent all points of view, and give people a chance to literally just it isn't black and white. And I had a character in the book who is effectively pro-life and who does get radicalized, but there are
Mhm.
reasons for that. She's come from a background where she had a child with a genetic problem, and when she was going through her IVF and the diagnosis, she was effectively advised to abort that child. And it's something that she finds particularly difficult because then she is not able to go on and conceive again.
Hmm.
So this was her history. And so then, of course, she's very vulnerable and she joins one of the groups, Fruit of the Womb. And then she gets radicalized and becomes one of these very, strident protesters who, stand outside fertility clinics, much as we know the pro life brigade do, and protest
That's right.
against any kind of modification. And that's where I took the inspiration, really.
Right, and I mean, if people are not familiar with this, the the radical contingent of these people, they protest in front of clinics. That's what we're trying to replicate here with those two avatars that are waving the GM baby sign, which is some, I mean, that's kind of mild compared to what's happening in the real world, where they really shame people who would drive to an abortion clinic get driven there, and they have horrendous pictures of body parts and such to kind of smash into people's faces and all sorts of things. And then I don't want to spoil it, but something really big happens also in the book, which has to do with technology. The term doxing is employed, or I think that's quite brilliant plot wise. Okay, but before we get any further, I'm going to pose one of those questions. I actually wanted to pose a question every 10 minutes. Um, to the audience. What does the term pro-life mean to you? Tick tock tick. Now people can answer that questions here, that question in the audience. And Eve, I had such, while I was reading the book halfway through, I was like, hey, I'm gonna treat the audience like a focus group on these questions, because you raise all these questions that are difficult questions. Sometimes you really have to reflect on your own morality and ethical sort of guidelines. And I was thinking, I'm going to ask these questions, and then I'm done with the book. And at the end of the book, it's like, let's see, I have the book right here in the real suggested book club discussion points.
Oh, yeah. I don't want you to forget about it. I want it to go on and turn
Yeah, but
around your
I can come
brain.
up with that stuff myself, Eve. You're
Oh, well, you
treating the reader
can.
like a child.
Oh, I know, but honestly, sometimes people don't. They ask you, they want questions. So I know. I would think most people will have already asked a gazillion questions by the time they get to the end. But frankly, it was probably a naughty marketing ploy going, by the way, you might like to read this for your book club.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. I saw that in other books too. No, no, no. I'm just joking around. Now, here's another question. I think Arden, I don't know if he's answered this question. Arden says a very black and white thing. That's what pro-life is to him. That's a
Yeah.
good answer, Arden. Here's another question. Would you steal DNA from your favorite celebrity
Mm.
to add a little of his, her, their magic into your offspring? Okay, we were talking about Pierce Brosnan before you came on. Uh, some people said yes, of course. Bull said it's creepy. Isabel says yes. Arden says no way. Okay, fine. So this is by the little polling that we're doing here, and
Good.
let's do another controversial question here. Um, these are my book club questions. Eve, they're not in your book. Would
That's
you
all right.
obscure fatherhood via gene editing if you could, for the greater good? Hmm?
Oh.
Again, this is the plot of the book um, God damn it, uh,
Off target.
of target, um, which is a term describing unforeseen um, genetic mutations. So the answers here in the local chat is Shadow would say me. I would go with either Brian Johnson, lead singer of AC/DC, or Philip Rosedale, founder of Second Life. That's good. That's a good answer. So you would I don't know what is that the answer to the first or the second question? Siri says no, and Arden says it's falsifying evidence, and Siri says it'll come out eventually. So people are on a firm no about that. But here's a
Okay.
much harder question, I think. Um, let's give that sign a little second to come up. Would you abort a baby if a high likelihood for a disability could be determined during pregnancy? Arden says depends on the expected quality of life. Eridur says taking out one personal genetic contribution. Oh, this is from the previous question. Taking out one person's genetic contribution is unethical. Isabel says no to the abortion question, and Jessica says yes. So Eve, how about this? I mean, this is a much bigger question here,
Hmm.
right? And this
Yeah.
goes to the core of what we deem uh, life that is worth living, and this goes into the area, frankly, of eugenics. What the Nazis were big
Mm,
fans, the master race. I mean, newsflash, they didn't only kill Jews; they killed a lot of disabled people. Who
yeah.
determines viability? Who determines a life worth living? I work a lot with people with disabilities, and 100% of the people that I work with over the last 15, 20 years would say that their quality of life is actually pretty high.
Yeah.
While we look at them, oh my God, you're in a wheelchair all day long, you sad little puppy. I mean, there is
No.
a incredible ableist arrogance going on. Anyways, I'm
Absolutely.
rambling.
No, there is. And that's one of the reasons behind the book. That's exactly what I wanted to highlight because I do think it's very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And, not just around physical disability, but also around mental health conditions. Because
Yeah,
in the book, Carmel they start trying to play around with things around autism and other conditions, which, you just is it right to do that, and it's not a disability, and b, where does that end? It's hugely complex, to try and start playing around with such complex conditions. I think is very, very dangerous, and it was exactly this debate that I wanted to, the book to raise, because you're exactly right, who gets to judge
yeah. Who's
what
the
is
arbiter of
what
what
is
is worth
viable, what is
viable?
good, what does perfect look like, and it, that is just unacceptable to me, that there's some higher being, that, higher level or regulatory force that's going to make those decisions on our behalf.
That's right. That's right.
I'm very
Who?
sorry, by the way, everybody, for disappearing. I'm afraid I think my system can't cope, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
Oh yeah, we can hear you, and you edited yourself out basically.
Oh, okay. I'm
No, but
sorry.
you know what we're gonna do actually, because we had you reading, but then I actually love to read, so I'm going to read, and then you can enjoy this excerpt, and maybe you can set up the first reading. But before we do that, I want
Yes.
to read the comments here in the chat, and also our assistant here, Bowl. Can you please put the book lectern up so I can see the book? Also, the book lectern has to be a little bit higher because I'm so much taller um, than Eve. Now, here, the comments in the chat are very interesting. Arden says, in terms of the aborting people after genetic analysis, he reminds us it has already happened for decades. Genetic analysis to determine if someone should undergo abortion or not.
Yes.
Eridur, sorry if I mispronounce your name, says it leads into having a perfect society, perfect in quotation marks. Those who can afford it can have designer embryos children. Those who cannot will become the outcasts of society. Bingo, Eridur. Now you got
Yeah.
to read this book. You just summarized the sentiment, I think, that, or one of them, that Eve wanted to express. Bo
Yes.
Venus says, haven't there also been cases of removing the reproductive organs of people with disabilities against their will? Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Talk a little bit about that, Eve, because that's another. I mean, this falls under the umbrella of eugenics, I guess, the forced sterilization and that kind of thing.
Yes.
We need to
Yeah.
really keep that in mind.
No, I mean, that again, that's really, really frightening area. And actually, I hate to say it, but it is still happening now. In that the ethnic minorities, certain ethnic minorities in China, are undergoing forced sterilizations, the Uyghurs, in so-called education camps.
Hmm.
And it's not, it also, eugenics. Britain had a strong eugenics history. Fortunately, a law was never passed, but the states, Canada. It's not that long ago since some of the state sterilization policies were abolished, and even in India now, there's one state that is going through legislation to try and limit how many children people are allowed to have. So,
Hmm.
I do not see this issue going away, actually. And I think any kind of control over reproductive rights, in my view, is wrong. It's-
And I couldn't agree more. And again, the technological advancement may be really, really cool, but if there is a certain power structure in place, again, yeah, it could be the coolest technology.
yeah. And actually, what you were talking about earlier, which is these different one of your somebody was saying about there'll be the people that have got all the genetic advantages and those that haven't. There's a great film called Gattaca,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I don't know if any of you have seen, and there's a great term for it which is called the genobility. Right, people that have got all the
yeah.
nice edits that race off into the future, and then everyone else that can't afford them, and this is again another risk, as it will heighten existing inequalities, and that's why this has to be a broader discussion.
Sorry, folks. Sorry, folks, to be such downers here on the Second Life Book Club today. I know you guys were going like, "Hey, if I get the follicle of Keanu Reeves's hair, I can extract the DNA. God damn it, I'm not gonna do it." Um, Here, this is the Second Life Book Club. Again, thanks everybody for coming. Gapno, a few latecomers here. Welcome, and completely full house. The book is off target, and it is honestly, I don't know how many books I've read this year already, maybe 50 or something. Not all book club related, but in book club related, I would say this is the best book, and it does remind me of the best book of last year, Susanna Klemann's Twice, which also starts, and I'm going to read now. It starts with kind of a little bit of a very aggressive sort of home invasion type scene, which is awesome. So please set the scene for us. What do we need for the setup? This is the very
Oh,
top of
I'm
the book,
back.
anyways. Oh, you're back. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
back. I'm back. I'm back. I might fall over a few seats on my way back, but I'm back temporarily. Excuse me, audience.
Eve, do you mind if I read? I mean, this is
No,
this.
you go
Yeah.
for it in case I've been out again.
So please then set up. What do we need for this setup? It's right from the beginning, but if you want to add
Yes. So the
something,
first, yeah, absolutely. So the first reading, it's taken right from the start. And it's from the prologue, and we join my main protagonist, Susan.
and Susan is this is a first person narration, and later we'll talk about
Yes.
the brilliant decision to have the second part of the book actually alternate between her and the baby. Okay, so here it goes. I'm just taking my last swig when the doorbell rings. My hand freezes, glass against lip. Have they come back early? Wine sours on my tongue as the early evening sun dances leaf patterns across the room. Idiot, I swallow, as if Steve would ring his own bell. Now there's a knock. Two knocks. Delivery! I lever myself up and squint at the security cam. A guy in a short sleeved shirt and navy baseball cap is standing in my porch clutching a small package. I think of those macabre leaflets in the bin and my stomach tightens. But he looks legit. Knowing Steve, it's probably some enhanced variable. I imagine hurling his new smart band against one of the empty squares on the wall. Then again, it could be for Zarel. I activate the mic. Just a minute. I shuffle down the hall, wiping the mascara smears under my eyes. I should fetch that box down from the spare room and hang all the photos back up. That would show him. As I turn the latch, the thought makes me smile. The door slams into my face. I stagger back, cupping my nose. The man drops the package and barges past, his shirt straining against his chest as if it can barely contain him. I glimpse a tattoo, the length of his forearm. He scans the lounge and marches upstairs. Red petals spot the carpet. I need to run, but my legs won't move. I hear him thudding around, opening all the doors. Adrenaline surges, and I rush to the smart pod, hit the button, and steady my voice to give the command. Feet hurtle down the stairs. I race for the back door, but a hand grips my shoulder and spins me against the wall. Black eyes consume a sharp white face. I point at my bag on the table. Money, carts, take them. His mouth twists. There's a ferocity in those eyes. Drugs? Booze? There's something else. Where is it? My phone starts to ring. It's playful chirps, now obscene. I swallow. I don't know what you. He clamps my neck, stopping my breath like a valve. The abomination. Each syllable staccato. Where is it? He leans closer, crushing my arteries. Black discs spin behind my eyes. And that's when I realize he's here for Sorrel. I claw at his face, scrabble at his fist, a primal strength eclipsing my fear. The choke releases as he grabs my wrists. Breath and blood rush free. His arm wedges into my cheek. There's an inked black cross tapered like a dagger, two words underneath. Isaiah 64. Where is it? Fingers drill into my neck. The room begins to blur. I hear the ringtone again, faint like an echo. My lips make the shape of words. I don't know. Pain explodes under my ribs. Instinct commands my body to double over, but I'm pinned by the throat. Know that the Lord Himself is God. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. His lip curls back in a snarl. We are the clay, and He's our potter. All of us are the work of His hand. Pricks of light detonate my eyes. I think of that first scan, her twilight hand lifting in a wave. He squeezes harder, spit foaming, his chin, hot wafts of breath and sweat. Children are begotten, not designed. We will purge the rot and restore Adam's line. Darkness swoops. I strain every nerve and muscle to hold on. I'd give my life for hers, willingly, but I cannot protect her if I'm dead. And that's from Eve Smith's Off Target. It's
Wow,
from the
brilliantly
beginning.
read. Thank you so much.
Well, Arjun says I have talent as a minister, so maybe we'll go for that. So one of the things, Eve is back here in world with us. Wonderful. See this? Okay, we're rolling with the punches, and again, Eve, we're very appreciative that you made it here. The technical things are out of our control. Again, it ties in with the subject at hand in the sense that we're enthusiastic about solving HIV or maybe getting rid of coronavirus and all future viruses, but we don't know if that's actually happening. Just as we don't know that in Second Life that voice is working. Yeah. And oh yeah, I should say also, Eve, you can also, of course, pick up at any point in time the local chat if you want to pick up a point
Yes.
that people are making.
Yep.
Um, what was I going to say? Yeah, one of the other aspects of the book that I really love, would like you to talk a little bit about, is generally speaking, outside from the whole genetic thing, the anxiety of being a parent. Um, that you feel guilty, you're constantly on trial in a way. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm on double trial. I have a child and I'm married to a lawyer, so it's like double
Oh
whammy.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
tough.
yeah, I know. I'll go to my support group after the show, but talk a little bit about that. The guilt that you have, or is this my fault as a mother, as a father? But also in this case, Zarel, the child, also, and she knows a little bit. I mean, she guesses, there's something going on with me in terms of my how I was produced. Uh, the the anxiety over the decisions that you make, generally
Yes.
speaking, with a child, but then also when you do certain enhancements or whatever you do without their consent.
Yeah. Yeah, and this kind of gets to another issue, which actually I've got a reading a little bit about that later on if we ever get, if I can stay here for long enough.
Yes.
And I think, yeah, I really wanted to capture that whole sort of difficulty around parenting, because the bottom line is none of us really know how to do it, right? And when you have your first child, it is total trial and error, and you can read as many books about it as you like, but at the end of the day, you're in the tight area. And in part two, when we actually meet Susan's daughter Zarel, part two, it's fast forward to when she's 11 years old. So at that point, I alternate voice perspective between Susan, first person, and Zarel. And I deliberately picked that age because it's a really
Yeah,
interesting transition
perfect age.
age
Yeah,
anyway. When you're moving up in the UK, we move from primary to secondary. It's when all the hormones are kicking in. It's when kids are changing from children and moving into adolescence. And so there's huge sort of doubts and second guessing going on anyway, let alone when that child begins to suspect that they are very different and
yeah.
that there is something wrong and they don't know what that is. And so that is what I really tried to capture, and that whole sense. And of course, all that does is exacerbate Susan's anxiety because she knows what she's done and she's kept it a secret from her husband, from her child, in fact, from everybody, bar her best mate and the naughty consultant that did it. And so she's constantly trying to second guess Sorel's reactions, and working out what can she do to make everything right. All she wants to do as a parent, as we all do, is make everything right and try and keep them safe. But her actions, sadly, go in the opposite direction, and she hasn't made things safe for Sorel. Her decisions are putting her in danger.
People hear you now in Second Life, so let's do that second reading. As you were saying, this is from the second part of the book, where Sorel is was alternating between Susan, the mother, and Sorel, the 11-year-old daughter. So
Yeah,
let's do that scene because the uh yeah, the fact that you picked that age where you're also a little bit, everybody who had a child will probably agree, with some exceptions, that there's also a time where you feel a little bit disconnected. At least that was the case
yeah,
with me. I mean, it's completely normal sort of process where the personality develops. And I mean, I went from the cool goofy dad to kind of like a weirdo, like, dad, are you home when I bring my friends, can you please leave, that kind of thing. And then of course exacerbated by the decision that Susan made. Okay, so here we're going to hear them.
yeah.
They're
You can hear
driving
me?
to the fertility clinic,
Yep.
right?
And then, yeah, basically, because of Zarel's modifications, she has to take her for regular checkups, right? They've got to check what's going on, check her blood, make sure that everything is going as it should. So she takes her for regular checkups and sort of pretends it's something else. So Susan's turning up to the clinic, but when they get there, they see there's a whole stream of protesters outside. And so this is kind of where we are going to pick up the moment, she said, because I just had it and now it has gone. Give me one moment. Right. Mum grips my hand. Right. Let's go. She marches towards the labs. The nearer we get, the tighter my throat becomes. Mum's breathing is deep and slow, as if she's gearing up for a race. I want to get back in the car. They've put up barriers either side of the statues. The security bots are lined up in front, struggling to keep back the crowd who are chanting something. As we get closer, I notice that some of the protesters have prosthetic limbs or are in auto chairs. A woman with long grey hair and a flowery dress is singing a song that's vaguely familiar. I know I'm not supposed to look at her sign, but I can't help it. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, all fruit of the womb a reward. It sounds like something the vicar would read out in school. One group of people are wearing white t-shirts with a red circle on the front and a line through it. In the circle is a dish and a knife. They're all staring at us. It's not a good stare. Mum's grip tightens. We make it into the narrow tunnel between the barriers. The chanting is loud now. Not your right to choose. Not your right to choose. My heart is skittering in my chest. A girl in an auto chair, who looks about my age, holds up her poster and smiles. Unscreened, unedited, and happy to be alive. The woman next to her doesn't look very happy, at least not with me. We trample over a carpet of red and white pamphlets. I think about picking one up. Maybe it has the answers I need. A man lunges forward and tries to give one of them to Mum. As she bats him away, another woman presses something small and hard into my hand. I hesitate, then slip it into my pocket before Mum sees. Words pound my ears. I'm finding it hard to breathe. Mum shoves her hand over someone's phone. They shout at her as a little boy with round brown eyes and a tiny nose squeezes through the barriers. He seems totally unfazed, swaying from side to side with his tongue poking out, clutching a blue and white sign that says, "Genetic diagnosis? No, I'm perfect, thanks." A security guard ushers him back through and steers us towards the door. Mum tugs my wrist. "Come on!" The doors slide open, and we practically fall into reception. Mum pulls me further inside. She's sweating. So am I. She clasps both hands around my face. "Are you okay, darling?" I can't stop trembling. I eye the windows, but luckily they've pulled all the blinds. "I'm so sorry, Zorel. That was horrible." She pulls me to her. My arms flop around her neck like a doll's. "Mrs. Rawlins?" It's the security guard. Mum ignores her. "Mrs. Rawlins, he'll see you now." Mum hugs me tight and pushes herself up. I grab my e-pen and force my fingers to write. The letters loop desperately across the screen. What were they saying, those people? What did they mean about choosing? She pats down her skirt and smooths her hair. "We'll speak about it later, Zoral. Now's not the time." Something inside me breaks. I ram her with my hands. She staggers back into the security guard and her face goes white. "Zarel." She drops to a crouch and grips my shoulders. "I know this must be frightening and you have questions, but you have to understand. These people, the things they're angry about. It's like those families in China. They don't concern you." I glare at her. "Then why are we here?"
And this is Eve Smith reading from Off Target. Thank you. This is just powerful, great reading. And this was from the perspective of Zarel, the daughter. And here we can see what we mentioned earlier about, okay, we're not like the Chinese, that there's this is specific, alluding to a specific thing here, but I think it's also broader in my reading. Um, and also, the interesting thing is what we should say is that Zorel does not speak at this point.
Mhm.
She does not speak. She communicates by writing on a tablet,
Yeah.
and she just stopped speaking. By the way, we have one of those protesters here. Lord
Oh, it's
himself
so
is
good.
God.
Look at that. They're
Okay,
brilliant.
you can go back there now. GM babies for
I
sale. Come
love
on.
those t-shirts so much.
Um, yeah, talk about that selective mutism. That's really important. What
Oh,
is that?
yes. Yes. So, selective mutism is a condition where a person or child suddenly choose to stop talking, but it is often as a result of a traumatic incident or extreme anxiety. And they normally would speak with one trusted person. You would know, maybe a parent, but in Zarel's case, she doesn't speak with her parents because actually she suspects something has gone wrong there. And actually, the only thing she speaks to at the start is her dog, her trusted dog Lola. And it's a very interesting condition. I actually spoke to a friend who's a speech therapist about it, and sadly, it is an increasingly common condition.
Hmm.
And it can absolutely people can be cured of it, but it takes very specific steps and therapies and a total lack of pressure, to make somebody speak, and a gradual building of trust so that somebody eventually feels confident enough to effectively speak in front of any one person or multiple people in a room. So yeah, it is a real condition, and a lot of children do suffer from it.
And here we have a slide here with some information you also have on your website. And apparently this is, yeah, this is a neural response. It's not just a choice where like, yeah, I'm pissed off, I'm not going to talk anymore
Mm,
with my parents or whoever or the teacher. This is a biological chemical thing that's happening here.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Arden is mentioning aphasia. I don't know what aphasia is. Arden, please elaborate in the chat. A couple of chat comments here. Shadow says he has a bunch of baby snakes in his coils and he will eat the protester. That's good. Have added or have a discussion about toning it down a little bit with the thing. But in your book, again, the nuance about these protesters, I think, is very important because in this excerpt, we saw that there are some who are um, disabled, and Shiloh put here in the local chat an interesting PBS uh, link from PBS Independent Lens about coerced sterilization and eugenics programs in the United States.
Yeah.
I would like folks to read up on this, and the name escapes me. I should have written this down. There was a prominent British scientist, and that
Oh,
went to
yes.
America back and forth, and Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, they got their inspiration from these people. I mean, this was really in the ether, these kind of thoughts. No, 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 it was not Mendel. There was the person who um, used what Mendel and others had found out about plants' life, and he put that towards human beings.
Galton. It was Galton.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Uh,
exactly right.
Somebody please bring in some links if you can. Oh, here we go. Um,
There's actually a really good book I would recommend, Drax, which was written by a British geneticist called Adam Rutherford. He's also a broadcaster on the
mhm,
Beeb, and he's written about it's called Control, which is a history of eugenics, and he talks about the whole progression all across the world, about the history of its birth, where it was, where it was prevalent, and where he thinks things are going now. It's
mhm.
a good one.
And it's really scary, of course. I don't have to belabor the point that these types of things they come up time and time again. There is a despicable person in Germany by the name of Thilo Sarrazin who suggested that the immigrants from the Middle East are watering down the precious German children because they are intellectually inferior by way of their inferior culture and this kind of bullshit. And he sold about 3 or 4 million books in 2010. So these thoughts are attractive because they're very easily explaining much more complex issues. And Eve is gone again.
Oh, I'm
But we had
coming
her.
back. I'm going to be coming back very shortly. I'm getting fast at it now.
Yes, and we actually had you read, so that's awesome. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, here we got the selective mute. Also want to inform the folks here briefly that in Second Life there is the possibility to get pregnant, to kind of role play pregnancy, if you will. It's very popular. I think it's quite amazing. I did a bunch of videos about that, and I got some pushback from these videos, again, along the lines of sort of ableist comments, along the lines of like, yeah, why don't they get real children? It's like ridiculous, and
Mm.
completely dismissing the fact that in my reportage, I cited the fact that a lot of people who are role playing this in Second Life cannot have children for one reason or another, or are older and had children and they just want to kind of capture that feeling again and play a little bit. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention that it's in my mind completely legitimate to express that desire in kind of a playful manner. It's a form of therapy, if you will, and to kind of dismiss that as something strange is another just form of ableism.
Yes.
Now, we live, of course, in the real world. Where do you think, Eve, the real world is heading? Just wanted to mention in the US, is, of course, very scary times. The Supreme Court, as we
Yes.
know, overturned a decision about
Yeah.
abortion that came down in 1973. And I saw a news report of a 10-year-old girl who was the victim of incest and was pregnant and had to basically move across states lines. And I think she was temporarily arrested. So that's where we're at. And at the same time, Oh, here's that tweet. I actually have it right here. So here's the F word. This guy says, "Who the F thinks 10-year-old children getting brutally raped and impregnated is some miracle from God?"
Mm,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
just wanted to mention that. That's where we are in the so-called real world. And here's another one. These people are pro-lifers. They're evangelicals, and they posted themselves with pictures that says, "Please don't abort. We will adopt your baby." Eve, what about adoption though? I mean, these people are of course despicable, but I was thinking in your book about adoption. Why don't Susan and Steve adopt
Ah,
your main protagonists? Why they're so
yes,
they're I mean, for 4 years they're trying to get pregnant.
I know. Well, because there is, for some people, there is a real desire to have their own biological child. Now, that's not to say, I understand that. Personally, I think adoption is an amazing thing to do. And I do think it is a really, really good option. Even if people aren't struggling, I know people that have adopted additional children, and are very happy. So, but in the book, um, Susan and Steve, I think, are traditional in their views, and that they are hanging out to have their own biological child. And so, yeah, that's where they're at.
Yeah, and again, I think we shouldn't judge that. I was just at one point, it was like, anyways, I don't. This is a post-show discussion. I don't want to impose my my opinion, my my opinionated opinion. Can an opinion be opinionated? What I wanted to mention was also really brilliant about the book, and we have about 6 7 minutes left in the program. So if people want to ask questions, there's a bunch of really great links here also in the local chat. Oh, Shadow says I have a Teagle horse avatar with a big pregnant belly on it. See, this is cool. Shadow, this is a horse avatar, and yeah, Shadow says, I have a friend who couldn't have kids in real life due to her vertigo, so she decided to have kids in Second Life.
Yeah,
That's wonderful. Um, yes, one aspect about Zarel, the daughter, what I think is really also important is that she feels literally afraid for her life now, specifically because she overhears certain things,
yeah,
and there are some, high profile things on the news where things got really went really south with the genetic modification process. So she is not just an alienated teenager of the normal variety. She's literally afraid that she will die. So it
yes,
is that kind of traumatic thing, and this is not in your book at all, but I think about this very often because of COVID, because of the climate crises, when older people frankly, bitch about young people, get your shit together. We survived the war and you
yeah.
guys are complaining. The existential dread that young people have broadly from 10 to 25, let's say, is a real thing. And I think it's just, I just wanted to mention that. I think we need to be a little bit more sensitive and have some empathy for that. I mean,
No, I do. I totally
yeah.
agree. I totally agree. And have I got time? I've literally got that little 30-second excerpt. Have I got time to read that?
Please,
Because I
absolutely.
think that sums it up actually. So
Yeah.
this literally like 30 seconds right at the start of part two when you first hear Zarel, but you don't know it's Zarel. And this really sums up what you've been saying. So this is it. I didn't ask for it, any of it. None of us did. Hair as fine as spun gold, deep ocean eyes, skin white as snow. I just wanted to be normal, whatever that means, like everybody else. But they did what they thought was best, like parents do, to give us an edge over the others. So they changed our bodies and they adjusted our minds. We never had a choice, but they did.
Hmm. And
There you
that's
go.
from off target. That's it. It's about that choice. And you know what? And I want to ask you this. Okay, so people haven't read the book, so I'm going to be very vague, but you know what I mean, because you end the book with a wonderful scene that made me cry, and then
Oh,
afterwards is a handful of pages where you wrap up some loose ends. And I really thought you were going to end with that exchange between mother and daughter. And then there's a tiny chapter, and then there's a news item, which make total sense. Like I said, this is a I'm in awe of people who can construct something this tight. But I thought, okay, you could have ended it there. It would have been more open, I
Yeah.
guess, right? But I don't know. I'm not saying it's bad or good or would be better, but it would have been an option. So I just want to go into your brain. Did
Yeah.
you contemplate this at some point?
Well,
And for
I'm
the
not a
people who haven't
fan
read
of
the book,
happy endings.
exactly. The question actually broader for the people who haven't read the book is the author under pressure to have a happy ending where everything is completely tied up? Is there a pressure that you set yourself? Are there other people around you who have this expectation?
Yeah, no, no, no. Well, it's not a happy ending.
Hmm.
I think you're under pressure as an author to have at least resolution. So if you've set up some big questions, you need to have some level of resolution, which is what I attempted to do. But I personally don't want everything to be sunny and happy in the garden, because the kind of book I'm writing and the kind of issues we're dealing with, that's just not life. So whilst there is some degree of reconciliation, there's not it's not happy. And I wanted to end on a sort of cautionary note. So the final news article is a cautionary note, because what
Hmm.
it does is remind everybody, well, okay, yeah, we can try and get some kind of international regulation together, but it's a bit like nuclear treaties and climate change treaties. You
Hmm.
might end up with a majority of nations, but there's probably going to be a big two superpowers that just are not interested,
Hmm.
and then you're stuffed.
Very good. That skips my last question. Where I was going to ask you where, where should we go? Because that I think is the absolutely perfect ending. Because this is not an easy question. I mean, there's certain things that we I think have to do. If that's going to solve everything, probably not, but that's life. That's who we are as human beings. It's a constant struggle, and a struggle is has to be embraced, frankly. And here goes Eve is gone again
I'm
into the
coming
wind.
back.
Her avatar, her voice is mysteriously still here with us.
I could
Uh,
come back.
yeah, please do come back. And I'm going to wrap up and step through the credits real quick. I want to acknowledge our friend Kitten Duo on the YouTube. She's watching on YouTube, and Kitten didn't feel well with a little headache. And Kitten is so supportive of this show. So thank you for your support. But also, Kitten says that being with us here really helps make her feel better. So that this is really awesome. And while Eve is coming back, actually, I'm scrolling through YouTube here. Are there other questions? Bixel says on YouTube, just a thought, wouldn't the problem of gene engineering a kid be smart mean that when he grows up, he's less likely to reproduce as there aren't as many women he can get along with? Could be the other way. Could also be women that are produced who are smarter and they can't find men that are smart. Oh, wait a minute. That's already the reality. Um, no, Bixel, that's an interesting comment. I think, yes, it goes both ways. Sometimes it's difficult to find the right partner. And also, All Venus in the local chat says, referring to the existential dread question, the existential dread still lasts past 35 years of age.
Ah,
Yes,
I'm with
Paul.
you on that.
Yeah, having turned 36 myself yesterday, that's a lie. Eve, I'm going to wrap up. It was absolutely amazing. Congratulations to this book, and also congratulations to your first book, the
Oh, the
Waiting Rooms.
waiting room.
Yeah, it
Thank
just
you.
came out in German,
Yes,
um, and it's called in German. It's called Der letzte Weg.
yes,
No?
yes.
So
That's a cheery one about antibiotic resistance for those that can face it.
there you go. I can just say the success of a book is measured by its translation into German, as we are the most important people in the world.
Obviously.
Not now. Uh, Thank you, and I hope you come back. And See, now
with a
even sit.
with a better computer, hopefully. Oh my goodness.
We are not what we don't want to be slaves to technology. We see the potential, but we also acknowledge that again, it's about the community, and we were together, and we still are, and that's what matters. And there's a horse, a beautiful horse, next to a little kid, a little child in a high chair, and a dog running around, and people protesting in the back, and a T-shirt that was falsely designed because of the supervisor giving the false instructions. And that's the beauty of life. Nothing is perfect. And let's end on this note. The Second Life Book Club is every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Pacific time. slbookclub at Draxtor.com is the um, email. And the show is produced by Isabel Shuren, Shyla, and myself. The location manager, master builder, Ruby Geek. Avatars are made by Ruby. Bespoke Caravan helps out sometimes. Research by Shyla and Monkey. We have a whole bunch of sponsors, meaning that we get their Second Life merchandise for free if we need it for the set. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you should wander the archipelago and find out. Um, yeah, calendar, Discord, Flickr, all this stuff exists. Please post your pictures there if you like, and please do support us by checking the show out on YouTube, like it, subscribe, and consider joining YouTube. And also, we have a tip jar. Now, a lot of people have Linden dollars in their pockets, jangling around, and please put those Linden dollars into the tip jar in the left corner there, because these tips go to the volunteer staff. Do not forget to do that. Don't leave before you put some stuff in there. I mean, I don't pay any of them. I don't even pay myself. It is a loss leader. For what is the question? Okay, enough of my humor. Next week, one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite British authors, contemporary authors, Will Wiles, is back. And Will Wiles is dabbling in fantasy, in the fantasy genre. So that's going to be very interesting. I haven't read it yet. I will start tomorrow morning, his latest book. And so I can't tell you anything about the book at all. You will just have to trust me that it's very good. As a matter of fact, I have to trust him that it's very good. Maybe it's crap. We we don't know. Um, that's next week, Wednesday, 12 o'clock, Second Lifetime. See you then. Thank you.